have a special guest for you to meet today. Jodi Krangle is a voice actor you may have heard on other podcasts, commercials, web explainer videos, or as a narrator on television. From Disney to Depend and beachside resorts to Little Blue Pills, she's practically done voiceover work for everything you can imagine. She's been an independent voiceover artist for 16 years and has been an entrepreneur for even longer. We met briefly at a podcast conference years ago, and the second she opened her mouth, I knew why she's successful in this space. Talk about creating a business around your gift. Jodi, thank you for being here with me today.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We want to know what your definition of abundance is.
Well, I think that the baseline of that people would say is money abundance, but I don't know that that is my definition. I think it probably has to do with more having enough money to have enough time to do what you really want to do. So for me, that's abundance. I'm kind of an introvert. You would never know, but I really am an introvert. And what that means to me is that I get my peace, I replenish my energy by being by myself, by doing things creatively on my own, reading, mindlessly watching television, just, like things that I don't have to do with anyone else. That replenishes my energy. And if I build enough of that into my day and I'm able to do that, that to me is abundance. If I can play to my strengths and not suffer financially for it, that's abundance to me. That's a good life.
Yeah. I'm an introvert as well. I totally know what you mean. I need lots of alone time. And working from home alone isn't quite enough because there's a certain level of still needing to be on while you're interfacing with people and working with clients. So considering that your business is your voice, how have you been able to work in that piece, knowing that your voice is required essentially to make money, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's how I do it. I think that I really need people around me to help me do the things that I really don't want to be doing myself. So outsourcing has really saved my life. It really has. It's made what I do so enjoyable because I can focus on what I really love doing as opposed to the other stuff that I don't really love doing. So I have a social media marketing person that helps me with that. She is fantastic. And if anyone is looking for someone, feel free to get in touch. I will let you know her information. She is just really helpful when it comes to getting me out there, putting me on the social media platforms that I need to be on, helping me maintain my media empire, because we kind of all have to have that these days. That's sort of how it goes. And I don't actually rely on her to respond. What she does is there's a reason why ChatGPT is so popular right now. And one of the major reasons is that it keeps us from staring at the blank white page, right? It gives us the instigation. It gets us the creative little spark that can get us writing something or making something or whatever. So she is that for me, basically. So she sort of starts something off. Sometimes it's great as is. Sometimes I need to modify it slightly just to be more in my own voice. And when she has it post, I have to be the one that responds. So I'm responsible for maintaining that discussion. And that's really what social media is about. You really want to have discussions. You don't just want to post it and forget it. You don't want to post it and ghost.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Post and ghost, is that what they call it? Yeah. So I never do that.
Yeah, thank goodness. Because there are so many accounts that you can come across easily that say there are posts every day, right? But there's zero interaction. And being very honest, even when you're producing a weekly podcast and that's what your social media looks like, it's really tough to grow. It's really tough to get your podcast discovered or establish a big following because you're essentially a ghost on social media.
Yeah.
So what other pieces do you outsource since you can't outsource you and you are the business?
Well, when it comes to my voice and my voiceover business, I will, in a lot of cases, outsource my editing. So I have a professional editor who takes the audio that I send him and makes it sound perfectly fantastic. And that is sent to my clients. And for me, I'm very picky about the audio that I send out because that is part and parcel of my business. That is the service I'm providing. So it needs to sound professional and it needs to sound right. And it needs to be able to slot right into where my clients' producers can just take it and run with it. Often that'll mean that when I'm recording, I'm actually giving them more than one read through of their script. So sometimes I'll do 2 takes, but what I'll do is in the middle of the take, I'll repeat a line that may be inflected some other way or could be inflected a different way, just to give them some choice so that their editors, their producers can then take that and slot in what they prefer. And it just gives them options. So rather than just, speaking the entire script and just putting it on an audio file and that's it, I'm thinking of where they're going to be using this and what they'll use it for and what options they may need in case something changes or in case they don't like the way that I ended that line or they need an inflection that they need a way that this sentence is spoken that emphasizes a certain word or, I think it's much more humanizing than someone using an AI would think is possible. I mean, that's kind of the issue here. I want to be more human because people are using AI now, and those AI programs are hard to program. First of all, they're not that easy. It's going to take you longer to program an AI voice than it would be to just hire a voice actor and be on a session. Or just have me record it for you because I've been doing this 16 years and I know what I know what it should sound like. And, I know how people talk.
Yes.
The place names and the people names are spoken correctly, which often with an AI voice does not happen.
Yes.
So yeah, there's all sorts of things. I mean, and I'm not here to say that AI is all bad. I'm really not. We were speaking about ChatGPT and how looking at that blank page is really hard and how that can help spark an idea, which is fantastic. I think that in certain instances in voiceover, maybe it could replace a voice if you are needing to change something on a super regular basis and it's like huge amounts of stuff, like a phone system or something like that, where people are used to hearing an automated voice. They don't necessarily want to. You may want to put a human voice on your on hold, but the IVR, like the actual press 1 to, reach whoever, like that part doesn't necessarily need to be a human being. If you're changing it to a language, like changing a different language, localization is really good for that if you can get the right accented inflection, like there are different inflections, different accents in Spanish.
Yes.
Spanish isn't just one big thing,
Absolutely.
Right? It's, like Puerto Ricans sound different than Mexicans. Like it's just like there's differences. Yeah. And so you want to make sure that a person maybe is doing that because that person will know those nuances. Yeah. So if something doesn't need a nuance, maybe that works really well for replaceable content that you're not expecting a human voice for. But, it's not all bad is all I'm saying.
Oh, no.
I think it has its uses. I just don't think that it replaces a human being for the ease of use.
Right. Right.
And for the white glove treatment, which you're likely to get from a voice actor who is going to go through and educate you and tell you what needs to be done and work with you on your vision of a project and creatively collaborate with you on something that's important to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if it's important to you, use a human.
Yeah, absolutely. And most of the time when I'm talking to someone about their vision, it is important to them or they wouldn't have dreamed up this amazing vision for the show or whatever they're doing. Have you ever pictured yourself having your own show? Maybe it's time. This show is edited and produced by podcastabundance.com. And if you like what we're doing, we can do it for your business too. I'm Virginia Elder, and I've been helping entrepreneurs start podcasts to market their business since 2019. I coach you through branding, structuring your episodes, workflow, and recording your podcast. Then my team and I professionally edit your audio and video so that you don't have to. We'll even write your episode descriptions and titles so that when potential customers turn to Google, your show appears in their search results. Establish authority in your niche, expand your reach, and create a library of helpful content for potential and current clients, all with your own podcast. I'm here to hold your hand and make podcasting the exciting, up-leveling experience it should be, skirting you past the tech and software struggles too. Take the first step by booking a call with me using the link in the show notes or by visiting podcastabundance.com. Now, on to the rest of the show. So, just to give people who are listening, just in case they don't know you, a quick rundown. I mean, even just on your website, there's TV narration, there are different commercials, different genres, right? And you even mentioned personal finance, automotive, corporate narration.
I do a lot of healthcare.
Yeah, healthcare. So anything that you would need someone's beautiful, may I say, voice to narrate. And I know you because of the podcast space. So some people will hire you for a trailer or an intro or outro for their show. Those are probably smaller projects for you. But of course, to me, even when I hear your voice talking on this interview, it just sounds beautiful. So I hope everybody's picking up on that as well.
Well, thank you. One of the other genres that I really love working in is travel and tourism. And that is where I feel my voice can really fit.
That is.
There are certain genres that my voice does not fit into, and I am totally aware of that. Most like sports, exercise stuff. I don't think my voice is made for that. I mean, I can do it if you ask, but generally because of the enunciation of words, because of, the deeper tone, maybe there are certain things that my voice is well suited for and certain things that it's not. And that just means that there are many other voice actors out there who can sound the way that you want them to sound. There's room for all voices is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we talked a little bit about how AI helps and then maybe how it's not helpful. We do use some AI, like you said, to prompt what to write in show notes, right? We aren't copying and pasting. We are using the ideas generated to help format out a longer form piece of show notes or...
You know what I love it for? Yeah. I love it for shortening stuff.
Yes.
So if I say, okay, I need this to be 200 characters because it only will fit in this particular field I need it to go into. So shorten it into 200 characters. And it does it in 5 seconds.
Yes.
Yes. I didn't have to spend an hour doing this.
and some of us tend to be longer winded. And so you get describing something and you've got a full page and you're like, wait, this was supposed to be 500 characters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's really helpful in that aspect, I find.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any other spaces where you outsource or use AI that might be helpful for other business owners to know about?
Well, I outsource my audio editing. I outsource my social media marketing. I'm very much involved in it, but I do outsource the creation of a lot of it. And then I sort of check it over. And when it's sent out, I answer. I also outsource a lot to do with my podcast because my podcast, I mean, as you know, it takes a lot to put out a podcast on a regular basis. Yeah. And we've been doing this now for 4 years. Plus, over 4 years. And I find, first of all, that I don't want to be editing the audio or video. So I have outsourced that to a friend of mine who does an excellent job. His name is Humberto Franco, and he is a fellow voice talent in Portugal. Hey, Humberto.
That's amazing.
And he is fantastic. He's just amazing, and he does a great job. And I love working with him. So as far as our team, I would say really it's myself and Humberto, because the two of us are putting everything together. Yeah. But I have someone who writes my show notes, and it is actually being written. So yes, he does use some of the AI from Podium, which gives us an idea of some keywords and maybe a title and that kind of stuff that would be more SEO friendly. But he actually writes those show notes. Like, they are written by a human. And I find that is really important because, well, a lot of people put out show notes and don't expect anyone to read it. But for me, it's actually my blog post. So when I post about the show, I post a blog post and put the player at the top, and that's what I promote. I don't promote Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever my podcast happens to be. I promote my own website because I know that's not going down.
Yeah, and which you should, because then the more traffic to your website, the more likely people are going to see your products and services or click on a little player and hear your voice and think about what it would be like to hire you or whatever it is.
Yes, exactly.
We should always be promoting something on a platform we own rather than an Apple link or a Spotify link, if at all possible.
I totally agree. Yeah, definitely. The only other thing that I outsource is the producing when I'm in the interview. So I usually do my own interviews on Riverside, which is very similar to what we're doing here. And I have a producer. His name is Sean Savage. He is fantastic, and he's in the Toronto area, which is where I'm located. And he produces, basically he runs the session. So it's like having someone in a studio looking over everything when the audio and the video are being recorded, and making sure that each of you have good audio levels, that you're centered in your video screen, that you're getting good lighting, that all of this stuff is good, so that when the output of the audio and the video happens, you have good material to use. Because that would waste all of our time if that wasn't good. So, and that's a fairly recent development. I think I started doing that about, I don't know, halfway through, maybe a little more than that. The 4-year run, I mean, we have like over 220 episodes right now. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a while. But I will say it's kind of a godsend, because not having to worry about the tech aspects and just talking to my guest. Oh, so wonderful.
Yeah. Takes the pressure off.
It really does. It really does. Yeah.
So share with us a bit about maybe where your business was before you started your podcast, if the concept of your show was born from needing to market your business, or like, what were those early ideas of, I'm going to create a podcast? What did those look like?
Well, in the very early days, I was part of a business mastermind, and it was not voiceover specific. It was business, and I was the only voiceover person there. And we were discussing a lot of ways to improve our business, and podcasting came up multiple times, and I fought it because I knew it was a lot of work. And it was either that or blog posts. And I can write. I just don't like to write. It's not something that lights my fire. So I can do it, but that's why I pay someone to write my show notes, because I don't want to do it. So blogging was not going to be my way to promote my business. And I knew that. And I decided to experiment with podcasting early on. So I think it was June or July of 2019, I started a little podcast called Jodi's Silver Linings. And I only had 30 episodes. Like, it's still out there somewhere, but like it's not anything to do with my business, really. I was just starting something to get the idea of what it would be like to make a podcast how much effort it would take, how interviewing would go, sort of understanding what it was about and getting a feel for how to do it. And like I said, I only did about 30 episodes. And what ended up happening, it was just about common wisdom, like just things that I was getting annoyed with people about because I'm a little older and, I wouldn't say set in my ways, but I would say some of the things that people do, like constantly taking pictures of their food instead of enjoying their food, or the whole hustle mentality that you need to be productive every second of every day. That I can't understand, and I don't think it's healthy. So little things like that. I was having little solo episodes discussing these kinds of things, and I was kind of writing a blog and then speaking it because that's what I do as a voice actor, and I thought that would make it a little easier.
Kind of scripted a little bit.
And for me, well, yeah, but some people like talking off the top of their head. They just like, riffing on something, right? I find it really hard to do that because I like planned spontaneity. How do I express that adequately? I don't like leaving things to chance. I like planning things.
Yes.
I'm definitely an A-type personality.
That's awesome.
So for me, I needed to write it first and then speak it. And for me, it was less of a stretch because, of course, that's what I do every day. I read things and make them sound like I'm not reading, right? That's the whole point of what I do.
Yes.
So for me, that was the easier way to go. But I was talking about this and I was mentioning just common wisdom type of things, like common sense is less common, like that kind of thing. And I started to be asked by people to be a life coach.
Okay.
And this was never anything that I even approached wanting to do. And it really nailed home to me the fact that if you have a podcast about a particular subject, whatever people perceive that subject to be, you become an authority in that subject, whether you like it or not. So choose what you want to be an authority in. And that should be your why, It's kind of I think a lot of people start podcasts not really realizing what their why is. And that's what I did with my first podcast. So when I started the second one, I thought a lot more consciously about what I wanted to be seen as an authority in. And my obvious thing that I wanted to be an authority in is sound, because that's what I work in every day, all day. And it was more than that. It was that I wanted to educate people on the fact that sound is everywhere and it influences us and we should be more conscious of it. And as a voice actor, my services should not be called in last second as an afterthought. And neither should the sound design, neither should the music. It should all be part and parcel of the entire project, including the visual. So the visual is not necessarily the be-all and end-all of your video. Yeah, a video is visual, but without the audio, you're only going to get half of really what it's trying to get across, and you're not going to care. That's part of the problem. So what I was experiencing as a voice talent was that a lot of people were not giving audio and sound its due, because sound really makes us care about what we're seeing on a screen. Like, turn off the sound on any movie and you'll understand what's going on maybe, but you won't get any of the emotional context. You're not going to break into tears watching something. You will when the audio is there. You will when you hear the music that gives you the cue that this is something really sad, or that the dialogue is something really sad, or, but even the dialogue alone isn't enough. It's the music that puts us over the top. But it hits us in the heart. And most selling of any kind, advertising, marketing, branding, It's all about being memorable. And if you're not memorable, it's a failed whatever. It's a failed advertisement, it's failed marketing, it's failed branding. And if you really want to be remembered, you need to hit people in the heart. You need to make them care about who you are. You can't just show them.
Yeah.
You know, that's not going to reach them. We don't buy based on logic. We buy based on emotion. This has been proven like many, many different times. Psychologically, we are wired to be multisensory beings. And if you ignore sound, you're ignoring half of what is going to make people influenced by what you're putting out there.
Yeah.
And whether or not you're trying to sell anything, you are trying to influence people.
Yeah.
So
even if you're just establishing, let's say, a personal brand and you don't have like a product yet.
Exactly.
You're trying to grow your brand, right? So that as you develop a product, then at some point you'll have something to create like passive income or whatever the trend is that you're going for.
Yeah. Passive income is never really passive income the way that people describe it. I'm not really sure what they mean by that most times.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's a flashy term that has gained eyeballs because of the idea that you could earn money doing nothing, which is never the case. You have to have done something. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, even people say voiceover is like, it's not passive income, but, you know, you make money in your PJs. Okay. I mean, I don't need to be wearing a dress and have like tons of makeup on when I'm doing my voiceover. No, you're right.
Yeah.
but it's still work.
But the challenge there is still your time and your energy one-to-one. Many other businesses have this opportunity to scale because they aren't faced with needing to reproduce their service or their product or whatever the same way that you are. So that's where I think...
Well, I'll qualify that just a little bit. And the reason I will do that is because, yes, I do need to voice something for it to make money. However, there is something called licensing, and this actually happens in music as well. So people license music to use on advertising, and they pay a certain amount of money depending on where it's going to be used and for how long. And there's the same thing happens in voiceover. So my voice is being licensed. So yes, I am doing a session with a client that may last an hour. And yes, I'm probably getting a session fee, which is minimal. It's not huge. What they're really paying for is where they're going to use it and for how long. So it's licensing, which means that really what I'm not doing is being paid for my time. I am not a commodity. I'm a licensed creative piece. So it's less about the time that I spend doing it, because I get pretty fast at this. Like I can get where they need me to go pretty fast. You know, 16 years doing this will do that. That's even if trends change and I'm coaching all the time. I'm learning new stuff all the time. You never stop.
That's awesome.
But even if that's the case, you still can get where you need to go really quickly. And I know my equipment, so the actual recording of it is not difficult at all. It's, you know, it takes whatever time, but it takes less time now for me than it ever did before. And so it's not their time that they're paying me for. It's the usage.
I like that.
So that becomes less of a direct transaction based on the time I'm spending and more on how much money are they going to make on the audio I give them.
Right. I really like that shift. Such a different business than...
It is, yeah.
You know, almost any business that I've seen the inside of, it's very different. So share with us a little bit more about what these past 16 years have looked like for you. What has changed for you? And if there's any like specific thing that you learned or did that just really made all the difference.
Well, I will say that when I started, it was probably a lot easier to get into this business because it was a little less inundated. Less people knew what it was, which, I mean, you know, I'm okay with people knowing what I do. That is not an issue at all. But when I started this, I had been doing SEO and internet marketing for about 12 years. So I got on the internet in 95.
Yeah.
And I had a songwriting website for a really long time, a resource online. And so I saw what the internet allowed. I saw the world open up. I saw it become a much smaller place. And when I decided I was going to get into this, it was really a focus switch for me because I was already self-employed. But I was making a certain amount of money. And I thought there was definitely a ceiling because in SEO and internet marketing, you are exchanging your time for money. That's how you have to operate. Unless you expand your business and have more people exchanging their time for money, you're really not going anywhere. You have a limited amount of time in your day. You can do a limited amount of work for a limited amount of clients, and that's it. You're stuck, right? So that was my first experience with being on my own as a business. And it was very limiting. And I enjoyed it because I liked being on my own. And I've been kind of self-employed / telecommuting since about 1999. So it's been, a long time since I've been out on my own. And what I was finding was that because of the internet and SEO, I knew that I could look online for information. And this was before YouTube. This was before the days of any social media that I knew of, really, other than like MySpace. So there really wasn't all that much out there. So what I did was I found a message board. And on the message board was our social media of the time, right? So I connected with a whole bunch of people online and started my journey from there, learning from them, making contacts with them, other people who were also trying to get into voiceover or already doing it, and having these discussions online. So while I'm in the Toronto area, I work 95% of my clients with the US. There's a small percentage in Europe and mostly like Scandinavian countries and Germany and like that kind of area. But really, like most of my business is with the US because I never limited myself to my own backyard. That was just never done. I never thought of it that way. It was always a worldwide thing. If I have access to the internet, why should I just be looking in my own backyard, right? So that made a lot of sense to me. So back in those days, the message board was the way to go, and you could learn online and do that kind of stuff. And then there were directories that you could be a part of that would send you auditions, and you could audition and pay them a certain amount of money to get these auditions. It was like a yearly membership. And then you would get these auditions and you would either win or not hear anything. That's really how it went, right? Like you either got the job or you heard nothing at all.
Yeah, they didn't send you oh, we're so sorry email.
No, you got nothing. That was it. You moved on, right? So those were the early days of what you would do as a voice talent to get started, unless you were in LA or New York where they had the local studios and you could just walk in, right? But I was not in that kind of a situation, although I kind of was. I mean, Toronto has its own area where you do walk into studios, and I had an agent. I did get an agent here. I have agents all over the US and in Europe as well. And those agents do help you get different jobs than you would get from an online directory. But at the same time, the online directories were a lot easier back when I started. And nowadays, they take way more in commission. You're competing with thousands and thousands of people, and they're more expensive, right? They're taking more of your money, basically, for you to sometimes not get anything. So it's a much harder thing to do these days. But yeah, it took a while. But I will say in about 2.5 years, I was making what I had been making at SEO and internet marketing. And then the sky was the limit because I'm not exchanging my time for money anymore.
Yeah, you have a broader opportunity, I suppose. So was it when you got an agent or started getting some agents that really shifted and kind of blew up the business for you? Or what was like a big, or even if it's been within the past few years, has there been anything that you're like, oh my gosh, if you're an upcoming voiceover artist, this is the thing?
Everyone's journey is different. And so it's really hard to say what would make that happen for someone else. I will say that when I started to get agents was definitely when I started getting the higher paying jobs. And that was fantastic. But I will also say that nowadays, and this is becoming more and more prevalent, the national jobs, they're not loyal to the voiceover. This is another reason why I have this audio branding podcast, because it seems to me like the big brands have a different voiceover person for everything they do. Like everything. They're not sticking with any one voice for any more than one campaign, even less than that sometimes. And I don't know what the point of that is, because people get comfortable and remember things that they're familiar with. And obviously they don't think the voiceover is that something that they can let people get familiar with, right? Which is frustrating. But then at the same time, the national jobs are paying a lot less than they used to, because broadcast television isn't as powerful as it used to be. A lot of things are online and streaming and all of that. So online is actually more important now than TV and radio, really, in many aspects, depending on what your business is. But yeah, it can honestly get you more business online. And that, again, is kind of a Wild West, because people are not aware of, you don't just throw in the online, right? Pay for broadcast and then throw in the online for free. No. That's making millions of dollars for people. I'm only asking for 0.1%, I'm not asking for much. So even less than 0.1, but the pricing has gone down. The places that people are putting this out has changed since I started. And what I'm finding now is that for someone to have a viable voiceover career that continues over many years, you need to have your own clients. So clients that are outside of the people your agents are bringing to you, and people that are regulars. So you may work with an ad company that does something specifically for restaurants, right? Or for retail outlets of some kind. That's all they do. They make these retail outlet, and they have 20 different retail outlets that they do stuff for. And you are one of the voices. You're like the voice of 5 of these outlets, right? And then they just call you on a regular basis, and you keep, doing work for them, and you keep getting paid because they're using you regularly. But the actual spots don't pay all that much because they're local and they're being used for a week and a half, right? But it's still regular, steady work. And that's really where a career is born.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm hearing a principle that's in a lot of businesses is don't just have one stream of income. Because yes, you have multiple clients. So you might think that's multiple pieces of income. But you're even talking about segments of clients. You've got work that is brought to you by agents. And then you have work that you've worked on that relationship. And so you have that relationship with an ad agency or whoever it is. So those are multiple clients within that, but 2 different buckets of reliable income sources.
There's also people who come directly to you from your website. So a lot of people ask, well, as a voice talent, do I need to have a website? Are people actually going to be looking for me? Well, yeah, they might. So, and the people that go by your website and the walk-in traffic, let's call it, right? Okay. They already partially know that they want to hire you. So they're there because they want to hear what you can do. And likely you're competing for that job with maybe 2, maybe 3 other talent. Mm-hmm. Maybe. Mm-hmm. As opposed to if you're on a directory somewhere, thousands of others.
Right.
Or with an agent, your audition is probably being sent in with hundreds of others, right? So that walk-in business is gold because they've already heard what you do. Obviously, you have that on your website.
Yeah.
And they have an idea already.
Yeah. Well, and again, that goes across any business, right? Yes, there are like 200 million websites. And so it's a very competitive space. If you're just like, oh, I'm going to launch a website, nobody's going to find it. But if you've already made yourself known in some spaces and someone hears about you or meets you or hears you on something else, then they're searching for you specifically and just checking to make sure you really do check all the boxes that they were looking for. So it's still important to have a website, even in a super competitive space. I highly don't recommend people just having like an Instagram page, and that is where you do, it's like an Instagram page and a podcast. And I'm like, this isn't a business to me.
The Instagram page went down just recently, didn't it?
Yep. And
so that'll give you an idea. It's not immune.
I had so many emails from personal finance creators and, kind of business besties who have subscribed to their email and things like that. And so that was all of my feed was Instagram is down. Will your business survive? And Instagram is down.
Yep.
So
Facebook was down for a while, and I think LinkedIn was down for a while too.
They all have to go through updates and might have a bug here or there.
Or they get multiple attacks. I'm sure they get attacked like every day.
Yeah, those definitely.
And that one happened to slip through.
Right. And those definitely aren't reliable places for you to solely sell your services or products. So I do need to let you go, but going back to the very first question where you shared a little bit about being an introvert and having peace and being able to turn off the screen and turn off the mic and have some quiet time to yourself. How have you continued to pull those important pieces of abundance, of your definition of abundance, forward into your business to this day, even being well-known, 200 plus episodes in? I even met you at a podcast event, and, it seems like you're everywhere all the time. So how does that balance with being an introvert who requires quiet time?
Well, I program in those times. So if I have an interview, I have one in a day. If I might have an interview that I'm conducting. So I would do an interview on someone else's podcast and then have one of my own. I could do that in the same day. But I don't tend to program too much stuff too close together. So I like to give myself at least like a half-hour buffer, something like that, just to give myself a little bit of, quiet time, just to settle and, get things back to normal for a little bit and then move on to the next thing. So for me, it's very much programming it into my day. I can't just assume it's going to happen. I have to make sure when I am scheduling things that I don't schedule them one after the other. That would not make me happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any tools or anything that you use to help you with that? Or is there like a little tip you could give us there?
People may not want to hear this, but I use Gmail and the Google scheduling, the, Google Calendar. My snooze function, really, I love in Gmail because there are emails that come in. I'm very much I want as little email in my inbox as possible, and I will get rid of everything almost compulsively.
Yeah, same.
So if I don't need to see it on that day, it doesn't stay in my inbox. I snooze it until the day that I'm going to need it. And then at 8 a.m, it pops into my inbox and I know I need to take care of that. Okay. So that helps a lot with scheduling.
I might explore that feature further because I haven't used it. So thank you.
I highly recommend it. Yeah.
Thank you. And of course, before we go, tell us where we can find you, where to listen to your show, all the special places, and if you have any specific things you really want us to check out.
Sure. I can be found at voiceoversandvocals.com. That's my voiceover business. And if you want to learn more about the podcast, it's at audiobrandingpodcast.com. And beyond that, I also on alternating Wednesdays have discussions about sound in Clubhouse in a house called The Power of Sound. So if anyone's interested in that, they can look up that house and join the house, and then you'll see the calendar schedule. And we just talk about all things sound. We talk about audio hardware and software and tech. We talk about podcasting. We talk about voiceovers. There's all sorts of stuff coming up that people might find interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.